Good evening. My name is Erin Rowan, and I, along with my partners, Katie Foley, Kristen Allen, and Michelle Hayes, would like to welcome all of you to the Compassion Dialogue. We first started kicking around the idea for tonight's event after my husband, Will, shared the TED Talk we are about to screen, Krista Tippett's Reconnecting with Compassion. Ever the multitasker, I attempted to watch it while doing dishes. Less than 1 minute in, I dried my hands and sat down. I knew almost immediately that I wanted to dig deeper into this topic with my community. As I have been known to do recently, I fired off an email to some pretty important people in town and held my breath. Fortunately, our first responders here in Scarborough take their jobs seriously, and I didn't end up having to hold my breath for that long. It turns out, as you can see from our panel, that I wasn't the only one who wanted to talk more about compassion. Thanks for joining us, Councillor Peter Hayes, Sarah Fitzpatrick, Chief Robbie Moulton, Heather Dallas, and Karem Dardag will be joining us later. Lynn Geary was hoping to attend, but she is ill, so she will not be here. We do have a video, however, that we'll share from her. Before we kick off the evening with a TED Talk that inspired it all, I have one more person I need to thank. Yesterday, I sent a panicked email to Alex Hoffman, TED's Director of Global Distribution and Licensing. I hadn't been able to make heads or tails of their licensing policy, and we didn't want to air the film without permission to do so. I did not expect a reply. Last night at 7:50 p.m., my phone buzzed. It was an email notification. It was Alex saying, I can call him Alex now, we can't have enough kindness. Consider this email your license, and thanks for doing what you're doing. In TED's mission statement are the following words. We believe passionately in the power of ideas to change attitudes, lives, and ultimately the world. I think those of us here in this room tonight believe it too. So let's get started. Here is Krista Tippett, Reconnecting with Compassion. And my tech guy is going to help with this part.
We're here to celebrate compassion, but compassion, from my vantage point, has a problem. As essential as it is across our traditions, as real as so many of us know it to be in particular lives, the word compassion is hollowed out in our culture, and it is suspect in my field of journalism. It's seen as a kind of squishy kumbaya thing, or it's seen as potentially depressing. Karen Armstrong has told what I think is an iconic story of giving a speech in Holland, and after the fact, the word compassion was translated as pity. Now, compassion, when it enters the news, too often comes in the form of feel-good feature pieces or sidebars about heroic people you could never be like, or happy endings, or examples of self-sacrifice that would seem to be too good to be true most of the time. Our cultural imagination about compassion has been deadened by idealistic images. And so what I'd like to do this morning for the next few minutes is perform a linguistic resurrection. And I hope you'll come with me on my basic premise that words matter, that they shape the way we understand ourselves, the way we interpret the world, and the way we treat others. When this country first encountered genuine diversity in the 1960s, we adopted tolerance as the core civic virtue with which we would approach that. Now, the word tolerance, if you look at it in the dictionary, connotes allowing, indulging, and enduring. In the medical context that it comes from, it is about testing the limits of thriving in an unfavorable environment. Tolerance is not really a lived virtue. It's more of a cerebral kind of assent, and it's too cerebral to animate guts and hearts and behavior when the going gets rough. And the going is pretty rough right now. I think that without perhaps being able to name it, we are collectively experiencing that we've come as far as we can with tolerance as our only guiding virtue. Compassion is a worthy successor. It is organic across our religious, spiritual, and ethical traditions, and yet it transcends them. Compassion is a piece of vocabulary that could change us if we truly let it sink into the standards by which we hold ourselves and others, both in our private and in our civic spaces. So what is it, three-dimensionally? What are its kindred and component parts? What's in its universe of attendant virtues? To start simply, I want to say that compassion is kind. Now, kindness might sound like a very mild word and is prone to its own abundant cliche, but kindness is a kind of everyday byproduct of all the great virtues, and it is a most edifying form of instant gratification. Compassion is also curious. Compassion cultivates and practices curiosity. I love a phrase that was offered me by two young women who are interfaith innovators in Los Angeles, Aziza Hassan and Malka Fenivesi. They are working to create a new imagination about shared life among young Jews and Muslims, and as they do that, they cultivate what they call curiosity without assumptions. Well, that's going to be a breeding ground for compassion. Compassion can be synonymous with empathy. It can be joined with the harder work of forgiveness and reconciliation, but it can also express itself in the simple act of presence. It's linked to practical virtues like generosity and hospitality and just being there, just showing up. I think that compassion also is often linked to beauty, and by that I mean a willingness to see beauty in the other, not just what it is about them that might need helping. I love it that my Muslim conversation partners often speak of beauty as a core moral value. And in that light, for the religious, compassion also brings us into the territory of mystery, encouraging us to see not just beauty, but perhaps also to look for the face of God in the moment of suffering, in the face of a stranger, in the face of the vibrant religious other. I'm not sure if I could show you what tolerance looks like, but I can show you what compassion looks like, because it is visible. When we see it, we recognize it, and it changes the way we think about what is doable, what is possible. It is so important when we're communicating big ideas, but especially a big spiritual idea like compassion, to root it as we present it to others in space and time and flesh and blood, the color and complexity of life. And compassion does seek physicality. I first started to learn this most vividly from Matthew Sanford, and I don't imagine that you will realize this when you look at this photograph of him, but he's paraplegic. He's been paralyzed from the waist down since he was 13 in a car crash that killed his father and his sister. Matthew's legs don't work, and he'll never walk again, and he does experience this as an and rather than a but, and he experiences himself to be healed and whole. And as a teacher of yoga, he brings that experience to others across the spectrum of ability and disability, health, illness, and aging. He says that he's just at an extreme end of the spectrum we're all on. And he's doing some amazing work now with veterans coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan. And Matthew has made this remarkable observation that I'm just going to offer you and let it sit. I can't quite explain it, and he can't either. But he says that he has yet to experience someone who became more aware of their body in all its frailty and its grace, without at the same time becoming more compassionate towards all of life. Compassion also looks like this. This is Jean Vanier. Jean Vanier helped found the L'Arche communities, which you can now find all over the world, communities centered around life with people with mental disabilities, mostly Down syndrome. The communities that Jean Vanier founded, like Jean Vanier himself, exude tenderness. Tender is another word I would love to spend some time resurrecting. You know, we spend so much time in this culture being driven and aggressive, and I spend a lot of time being those things too, and compassion can also have those qualities, but again and again, lived compassion brings us back to the wisdom of tenderness. Jean Vanier says that his work, like the work of other people, his great beloved late friend Mother Teresa, is never in the first instance about changing the world. It's in the first instance about changing ourselves. He says that what they do with l'Arche is not a solution, but a sign. Compassion is rarely a solution, but it is always a sign of a deeper reality, of deeper human possibilities. And compassion is unleashed in wider and wider circles by signs and stories, never by statistics and strategies. We need those things too, but we're also bumping up against their limits. And at the same time that we are doing that, I think we are rediscovering the power of story. That as human beings, we need stories to survive, to flourish, to change. Our traditions have always known this, and that's why they have always cultivated stories at their heart and carried them forward in time for us. There is, of course, a story behind the key moral longing and commandment of Judaism to repair the world, tikkun olam. And I'll never forget hearing that story from Dr. Rachel Naomi Remen, who told it to me as her grandfather told it to her, that in the beginning of the creation, something happened, and the original light of the universe was shattered into countless pieces. It lodged as shards inside every aspect of the creation, and that the highest human calling is to look for this light, to point at it when we see it, to gather it up, and in so doing, to repair the world. Now, this might sound like a fanciful tale. Some of my fellow journalists might interpret it that way. Rachel Naomi Remen says this is an important and empowering story for our time, because this story insists that each and every one of us, frail and flawed as we may be, inadequate as we may feel, has exactly what's needed to help repair the part of the world that we can see and touch. Stories like this, signs like this, are practical tools in a world longing to bring compassion to abundant images of suffering that can otherwise overwhelm us. Rachel Naomi Remen is actually bringing compassion back to its rightful place alongside science in her field of medicine, in the training of new doctors. And this trend of what Rachel Naomi Remen is doing, how these kinds of virtues are finding a place in the vocabulary of medicine, the work Fred Luskin is doing, I think this is one of the most fascinating developments of the 21st century, that science, in fact, is taking a virtue like compassion definitively out of the realm of idealism. This is going to change science, I believe, and it will change religion. But here's a face from 20th century science that might surprise you in a discussion about compassion. We all know about the Albert Einstein who came up with E equals mc squared. We don't hear so much about the Einstein who invited the African-American opera singer Marian Anderson to stay in his home when she came to sing in Princeton because the best hotel there was segregated and wouldn't have her. We don't hear about the Einstein who used his celebrity to advocate for political prisoners in Europe or the Scottsboro Boys in the American South. Einstein believed deeply that science should transcend national and ethnic divisions. But he watched physicists and chemists become the purveyors of weapons of mass destruction in the earliest 20th century. He once said that science in his generation had become like a razor blade in the hands of a 3-year-old. And Einstein foresaw that as we grow more modern and technologically advanced, we need the virtues our traditions carry forward in time more, not less. He liked to talk about the spiritual geniuses of the ages. Some of his favorites were Moses, Jesus, Buddha, St. Francis of Assisi, Gandhi. He adored his contemporary Gandhi. And Einstein said, and I think this is a quote, again, that has not been passed down in his legacy, that these kinds of people are geniuses in the art of living, more necessary to the dignity, security, and joy of humanity than the discoverers of objective knowledge. Now, invoking Einstein might not seem the best way to bring compassion down to earth and make it seem accessible to all the rest of us, but actually it is. I want to show you the rest of this photograph, because this photograph is analogous to what we do to the word compassion in our culture. We clean it up and we diminish its depths and its grounding in life, which is messy. So in this photograph you see a mind looking out a window at what might be a cathedral. It's not. This is the full photograph, and you see a middle-aged man wearing a leather jacket, smoking a cigar, and by the look of that paunch, he hasn't been doing enough yoga. We put these two photographs side by side on our website, and someone said, when I look at the first photo, I ask myself, what was he thinking? And when I look at the second, I ask, what kind of person was he? What kind of man is this? Well, he was complicated. He was incredibly compassionate in some of his relationships and terribly inadequate in others. And it is much harder often to be compassionate towards those closest to us, which is another quality in the universe of compassion on its dark side that also deserves our serious attention and illumination. Gandhi, too, was a real flawed human being. So was Martin Luther King Jr., so was Dorothy Day, so was Mother Teresa. So are we all. And I want to say that it is a liberating thing to realize that that is no obstacle to compassion. Following on what Fred Luskin says, that these flaws just make us human. Our culture is obsessed with perfection and with hiding problems. But what a liberating thing to realize that our problems, in fact, are probably our richest sources for rising to this ultimate virtue of compassion, towards bringing compassion towards the suffering and joys of others. Rachel Naomi Remen is a better doctor because of her lifelong struggle with Crohn's disease. Einstein became a humanitarian not because of his exquisite knowledge of space and time and matter, but because he was a Jew as Germany grew fascist. And Karen Armstrong, I think you would also say that it was some of your very wounding experiences in a religious life that with the zigzag have led to the Charter for Compassion. Compassion can't be reduced to sainthood any more than it could be reduced to pity. So I want to propose a final definition of compassion. This is Einstein with Paul Robeson, by the way. And that would be for us to call compassion a spiritual technology. Now, our traditions contain vast wisdom about this, and we need them to mine it for us now. But compassion is also equally at home in the secular as in the religious. So I will paraphrase Einstein in closing and say that humanity, the future of humanity, needs this technology as much as it needs all the others that have now connected us and set before us the terrifying and wondrous possibility of actually becoming one human race. Thank you.
Thanks, Will. So I was sitting there thinking about how that TED Talk could become an entire semester at college, full of rich dialogue and I think just really incisive thinking on everybody's part. And I was also thinking about how I'm not quite as smooth as Matt Lauer making transitions from, you know, a war zone to let's meet, you know, a rock star in the next 30 seconds. But I think that when we all look at that, and I really appreciate Aaron and Will bringing that to our attention. I watched it a couple other times before today, and every time I see it, I think about something else that we could either take action on or think about or bring to a community, or where, to their point, you know, certainly feel flawed or like we're not doing enough or contributing enough. But I think the takeaway for me personally was to look at that and say, you know, as citizens, as humans, as people living in a community that want to really be living in a, you know, a healthy, productive community where we enjoy the people that we're surrounded by, that we all are here because we care about compassion and we care about our community, and we all, in our own way, do things every day to make our community better for all of us. So tonight, a couple things. We are going to try to hold questions until the end, and we have some index cards that we'll hand out. So as people are listening to speakers, if something really triggers something for you and you want to hear more or ask more, just jot it down. If you're like me, I'm 54 and I go into the kitchen and turn around a few times and wonder why I'm in the kitchen. And then I figure it out when I go back into the family room and realize I don't have what I need. So just write down any questions or thoughts, or if you just have ideas around how, as a community, Scarborough can do, a better job, a more productive job, a more fun job with just compassion and kindness, just drop, in the back there's a jar, so just drop an idea, and we would love to have those, and we'll take all those into consideration quite seriously. So as we looked at putting this night together, we had a really productive leadership meeting at my house Friday night over some really good food, and we all stayed up past our bedtime. But we really started to think about how grateful we were when we sent out a request to the community to share your ideas. And we got ideas from churches, from schools, from, food pantries, from public service folks, from senior groups, from libraries. When we really scanned all the information that we were so grateful to receive, there really wasn't a constituency in town that really didn't respond or share some piece of just wonderful work that was happening. Some we were aware of and some we weren't aware of. So we really appreciate just the amount of information that we received. And with that, I will turn it over to our first panelists. We have 6 people who were brave and just dying to be here tonight, begging to be on the panel. And I'll turn it over to Peter Hayes. And Peter has compiled, along with the help of Aaron and some other folks, the data that we received, and we'll kind of give a high-level view of what's going on in your community and just the amount of amazing work that's happening as we speak, and that we hope to expand as we move forward. Thanks, Peter.
Thank you. Well, good evening, everybody. Delighted to be here. And I think I'll kind of take you on a little bit of a journey. It's really tough to follow one of those talks. I don't think I'll ever be a TED speaker at any point in time. But a couple things, and I've been kind of asked to give sort of a report about a compassion report about what we are doing in our communities. There's some wonderful things going on. Before I get there, though, I'll take us on a little bit of a journey, and I find it interesting. I shamelessly stole this first slide off of something, and actually this was taught to me by my youngest son, or my oldest son that's just starting his career. But this is actually a word association thing where you put out the word, in this case, compassion, and what people will bubble up words to describe that. And the size of the words that you see up there has to do with how many times those words are repeated by people. But what's really interesting, as we just came through that talk, look at kindness. Kindness really stands off on that page as defining compassion. So I thought that was an interesting starting point. From that, I'll kind of move on, and I'll kind of tell a personal story. Can people see that okay from where they are? Is it big enough on the screen? What it says, and it actually says, wow, I can't even see it on this screen. Must be my age. Unless someone like you cares a whole awful lot, nothing is going to get better. It's not. And I read that because it's kind of a story. We took our son, who's in high school, on his first college tour. We selected 3 different experiences for him. One was Dartmouth College, a small liberal arts school. One was the University of Vermont. The other was McGill University in Montreal. But I didn't realize Dr. Seuss, who was the one that authored this, was actually a Dartmouth grad. So this kind of resonates with me. But hopefully everybody that's sitting here really cares an awful lot about our community. And the only way it's going to get better is if all of us work together to do that. So I thought it was kind of fitting. Then I'll transition. I'm this frustrated liberal arts major that majored in geology, environmental studies, then economics, then became an accountant doing healthcare. So I've come a long way from the original intent. And I've always been fascinated by history and some of the leaders of history, and especially the World War II era, where there were some fascinating leaders around the globe at that time. And I think this really resonates with me. Winston Churchill's kind of a hero. I've read a lot of his stuff. But his saying is, we'll never reach our destination if you stop and throw stones at every dog that barks. And I think sometimes we fall into that trap, that we can pick at lots of things, but we're not always picking at the right things. So I just kind of leave that with you, and I'll transition to something different. As we talk about compassion, and there's sort of, and part of it is the compassion dialogue, and I'll get to something else in a second. But this, as we know, Prince passed away in the last week. What I found really amazing, though, this came from the Milwaukee Sentinel back in 1984, but around Christmas time, in a series of 5 concerts, he just asked his fans to bring food. And actually, fans bought enough food, 50,000 pounds of food, that fed 1,700 families around the holidays. And you think back in time, you think of rock stars, that may be a definition. Taking it a little bit further, and I'm going to really age myself, you can see all the gray hair I have. I kind of grew up with Prince and rock and roll and Tom Petty. And I didn't put all the lyrics here because if you guys really know this song, some of the lyrics may not be appropriate. But I really like the part, turn the radio, loud. I'm too alone to be proud, but you don't know how it feels. You don't know how it feels to be me. And again, as we think about compassion and what that means, my father used to always say to me, walk a mile in someone else's shoes. I think so many times in this community, we talk over each other. We don't listen to each other. All of us have valid viewpoints, and we don't know what that other person's thinking because we're not them. We need to ask. And so I kind of leave you with that. I was going to try to figure out our IT guy would let me. No, I'm just kidding. If I could have played the song, I would have, but that was way above my pay grade. So with that, I'll kind of transition. And what I'm going to do is we did, and I think you heard Michelle say, we asked people in the community to send us all the things that are doing, and we got a tremendous response. And all I've done is I've tried to summarize the things we did get back. And I'm sure these are not all the things that are happening in town. These are just some of the examples of things that we did get back. And so what I'll do is talk a little bit about things, and this happens to be public safety, police, and we actually have Chief Moulton here. But it's really about Project Hope, and I'm sure people are familiar with Project Hope, but what really strikes me is here are folks, from October till October, 144 people have walked through the doors that have come forward saying they have a drug issue, they really need some help. And the police department has found ways to get them help without any taxpayers' dollars. It's all coming from support from the communities and others. It's just a remarkable story. And I always thought I would recognize a drug addict. I had a preconceived notion of what they were. And actually they had some of the patients or some of the individuals that have come through this program. And literally to hear them say this program saved their life really, really struck a chord. It really hit home. They're also doing a thing, and again, I have a 95-year-old mom whose memory is really sharp. She can tell you anything about World War II, but she doesn't remember if she had breakfast or not. But there's actually, they've put in place a lifesaver program by which they can actually start to track people if they get lost in the woods or some of the elderly. These are just 2 examples of wonderful things that are happening in our community. And if we move on, this is about the fire department, and Chief Thoreau is here also. 2 things they have done. They have, and this kind of takes it in a different direction, but, and again, I'll tell a story. I had a couple of years ago, my oldest son had a prescribing medical. The physician prescribed something in ERA. He was pronounced clinically brain dead. We were told to turn off life support. And at that point in time, I would have paid anything to talk to somebody to help me through that time. He is absolutely fine today. But again, what this program is that I guess, and Chief, you can help me if I go astray off here, but they now have the ability when things happen that they can actually provide some of the counseling and you can read through this stuff. And what we'll do is, I digress for a second. There was a lot of material. All this material will be available on the Facebook page and or we can send the material to you. We'll go into a much more depth about some of the responses we got. But in this case, I understand that they can actually help the families that have had tragic incidents. They actually have worked out something with a trauma intervention program that can actually are trained folks that can help families deal with the issues, which is just a tremendous help. And again, that example that I had, that would have been such a service for me at that time of need. Another example, and this is kind of near and dear to us, and I'm sure people have heard about the community garden, but at St. Nicholas Church, they actually put in a garden that was actually a community project. They actually grew vegetables and things all summer long and took them to the local food pantries and distributed them. It's a unique story for me because this was actually submitted by Jane Ducott and her husband. Jane and Scott were very committed to this. It was actually a labor of love for Scott. Scott passed away about a year ago, so this is kind of a lasting legacy he's left, not only for the church, but for our community. So these are just some wonderful examples of things going on. I'm sure people have heard of Team Kyle, which is a community member that has had a son that has passed away, but continues to try to help others. Some things that they have done: they've sponsored 5 families for Christmas, donated to 3 programs for the school programs, Pay It Forward at Hannaford Mobile and Sicko, Easter baskets for families in need, and donated to a fund for a service dog. So these are some things that are happening, kind of individuals making contributions to our community. Here's another great story. It's the Masonic Lodge. They actually have had a program for many years where they actually, as children, read books that are approved by big teachers. They can put their name in a hat. They actually draw, it's like a raffle, they draw that out. When they started, they had committed to giving away 24 bikes. It actually ended up giving out 36. Now they're up to about 50, what is it, the number, about 56 bikes a year that they're giving away, which is just another example of really trying to help the community. Another one that we got back was the Pixel Fund, and it really talks about every week there are about 12, rescue animals, dogs that come into the community from other places around the country. They get distributed to foster homes across the state. A lot of our youth are coming in and helping on weekends to take care of those animals and making sure they get on their way to foster homes. Another great example is the Royal River Church of God. Actually, Pastor Art Fairbrother actually donated 200 backpacks at Summerfest. They also have volunteered with Project Grace for their fuel delivery this winter, and they've donated food, oil, electrical support to numerous families. Moving on, this is another service that's in town by an individual. It's MaineGroceryDelivery.com. It really tries to make it very affordable and easy for folks that can't get out of their home to go grocery shopping, things that we all take for granted. It's really designed to bring these services into the homes of people that cannot do that, whether they're elderly or have some type of disability or other, and it's very, very affordable. Again, just more examples of individuals really contributing to our community. If we move on, this is the PTA, and again, the same type of thing. They actually have raised about $20,000 for different school programs. They sponsor a lot of things in our community. So here's just another example of things that we have done. And as we move on to the schools, this is the primary schools. They have 2 goals that really talk about compassion, the things that we're doing. They provide welcoming and inclusive learning environment that promote safety, foster meaningful relationships, building and enhancing the well-being of physical, social, and emotional of students and staff. The second goal is to develop in each student the skills for engaged citizenship. So again, even in our schools, we're starting to embed this message of thinking of others and compassion and being considerate. Moving on to Wentworth schools, again, the same type of things. They have several different activities, and I'm sure on the right-hand side of your screen is actually letters that were written by students to janitors and thanking them for their services in the school. I mean, a lot of times we take those types of things for granted. That's really kind of remarkable. They have other things where they're actually, K-Kids are actually doing contributions, trying to get donations to give livestock animals to communities that are in need. They actually have a morning greet where some of the students every morning get on and greet the class and make announcements, and also ask for them to consider something each day that they can do for others, which I think is really pretty remarkable. And I think I'll embarrass Bud Hansen that's here in the audience, and he actually can describe you've gone into Wentworth and you've taught read to 60 students, and I think you'd be glad to share some of your experiences and how it made you feel and what you saw.
As you're talking, I recall all of these things that you mentioned. My name is Bud Hansen. I live in 22 Stony Creek Road. I was born on March 4th, 1930. In 14 years, I'll be 100. I had the opportunity to be asked to read to the students at the Wentworth School, 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. Principal, that's why, did she get my chance? No? Okay. she asked me, she says, "But I got a job for you." I went, "No, you're fine." I got a job for you. "What is that?" She said, "I want you to come and read to the students." I said, "I won't do that. I want the students to read to me." So we had gone through this. Awesome. So we did this. And I read to, I believe it was, over a period of April through May of last year, I started out with, I think it was on the 18th of May, and we're reading The Midnight Light of Polly there. We got through that very quickly. I had them read to me with all kinds of stories. And as Peter was saying, these things bring tears to my eyes. When I got six thank yous from every student that I put to one side and they read to me. And I find that to do this, indeed, I'm sure everybody realizes what happens in the schoolroom. So what I did was I joined the reading class. I used to go early and listen to the kids read. I finally got my name on the board. How many books did you read? As Peter was saying, the 36 books that the laws gave away, you had to read 30 books to qualify to be in a contest. I read 12. There were 17 or 18 books for girls and the same for boys, and they also gave them safety helmets to wear. It's a very enlightening situation. When I walked through, I was at a parade at the Veterans Home one day last year, and a young boy comes up and said, "Hi, bud." And you go with this, "Yeah, that's what a great experience it is to be recognized. Other situations is the school primarily developed middle school Operation Cupid. Have you heard of Operation? I am a veteran, as I'm sure many of my audience are veterans also. I received the first one maybe 3 or 4 years ago, and it brought tears to my eyes. They were thanking me to be a veteran. My family thanks me when it happens, and there's all kinds of things going on. But to have these students send me a personal note saying, "Thanks, Bud, for being a veteran on the day." So they do it often, every single year. One quick short story, and I'll get off the phone. My grandson was in a terrible automobile crash. We nearly lost him. He was in New York. It was 22 months ago. And he was in the back seat of an automobile, and they were on to the boss's house for cookout. There were no drugs or alcohol involved. The driver was exceeding his speed limit. Beside my grandson in the back seat, and they just picked up a young girl, 19, who was a bookkeeper. That's where they were. An accident happened. The little girl was killed instantly. My grandson, we almost lost him. He had a 5% chance of recovery. Now he has finally gone back, be able to go back to work. The situation was that my son-in-law, Spencer's dad, invited all the people involved in the situation, and he used 3 words that we hear tonight. One was kindly sick. Thank you for your kindness and the expression and compassion that you have shown to all the people who were injured in the crash. And I just say thank you. There are some things we can do. I think the more time that we get out, and I like to see the students, schools get more credit for what they're really doing. And as a young boy working for my dad at one of the drugstores, 1938, and when you walk down the street, you always pick it. And that was kindness, I think, to the elk. Also, he was showing respect that can be part of compassion. And in those days when we took a walk down the sidewalk, the man always walked on the sidewalk, on the street side, the gal always walked on the inside. And I always told it over the line. Even today, I find myself opening the door for the ladies. I don't see it happen very often. And one of the places is, Chief, there's no kindness on the highway anymore. That's not your fault. That's my fault as a driver. And I recognize that. So I no longer drive on the interstate. Thank you very much for your patience. I hope I haven't worked you too much. Thank you.
Wow, another tough act to follow. So moving on to the middle school. Here's some of the things. I mean, we've kind of listed things here. We've already, actually, Bud kind of referenced some of them. Bike-a-thon for AIDS, Interact Club, Builders Club, Red Storm, Strikes and Cancer, Student Advocacy, Kindness Crew, Operation Cupid, Stuff a Bus, Hat and Drive, Builders Club. So again, there's lots of activities, lots of things the students are involved in, bringing compassion into our communities. In the high school, there were lots of things referenced. I thought here what was interesting, just kind of what their goals were, and what they've highlighted that they're trying to do is each Scarborough High School student will recognize the power of personal participation to affect the community, understand the importance of accepting responsibility for personal decisions and actions. I'm actually still working on that. Understand the importance of accepting responsibility for personal decisions and actions related to personal wellness. Recognize, understand, appreciate the diverse nature of our society. That's a real challenge, especially a lot of our communities going forward. Collaborate successfully. Civil expectations. Each Scarborough High School student will demonstrate the rights and responsibilities of a democratic society, as painful as that might be this year. Never mind, just a sidebar with the political elections. An attempt to make positive contributions to our community. And the next slide, what we attempted to do, there was so much that they shared with us about the various, there were over 24 sort of report outs of the different activities and clubs and the things that are going on in the high school, that we couldn't include all of it here. And rather than highlight some things and leave some things out, we just encourage you, this will all be available, again, on the Facebook page, right, and available upon request. And we'll have a report that will list all these things. Just encourage you to take a look at that. It's really pretty remarkable. And I guess with that, I'll just close. And those that know me, I kind of have a thing for golden retrievers. My wife has actually shut me down. I can't post anything more about golden retrievers on any sites. Well, the dog site I can, but I just leave you with this, and I think it was just Dalai Lama quote, but it's really our prime purpose in this life is to help others, and if you can't help them, at least don't hurt them. Something for us to all think about in our community as we interact with each other. And so I will leave that at that and turn it over to the panel, I guess. Is that? Good luck.
Thank you, Peter. Our next panelist, Sarah Fitzpatrick, is here representing the high school, and she's the president of the Interact Club, and they do excellent work, and I think is just one good representative and microcosm of the excellent work that our students are doing in the schools. And I think certainly as an adult who's had a child graduate from the school system and has another one at the high school, that it's always wonderful when we actually hear from students. We talk a lot about the schools, but to actually have a fabulous representative here from the high school talking about what's going on from the inside, we're very proud and pleased that Sarah was willing to join us tonight.
Hi, can you hear me all right? All right. So I'm really excited to be here today. I want to thank you all for coming out. I know that this is an amazing cause, and I'm really honored to be here. My name is Sarah Fitzpatrick. I am a senior at Scarborough High School, and I'm also the president of Interact Club, so I was introduced. As most of you in high school, or, well, used to be in high school, know that sometimes kindness can be very difficult to come by, and there are a lot of challenges in high school when people are trying to find their identities and work through their own problems. But that's why I really enjoy being part of Interact and other service clubs, because this is setting aside time in your week or month or day or whenever you want to do it to just help others and just be completely unselfish. It's so amazing to me. So I think to really reach out and create a kind community, we really need to start in the schools and get kids involved. And that's a big reason why we actually expanded Interact Club to the middle school this last year, actually. Wow, a year. So we did that because there were only a few clubs in the middle school before, and all of them you had to be either selected by a teacher or like you had to submit an application. And we were kind of unsure about that because a lot of students in the middle school wanted to help out and they wanted to get involved in the community, and that wasn't a possibility for them because they didn't want to do this application or they hadn't been chosen. So Interact started in the middle school, started with 5 students last year, and this year there are over 20 who signed up, and they have been doing projects all over their school as listed before, but they also have been working outside their school with Partners for World Health, which I'll talk about a little bit later, but it's just, I'm really proud of them and happy that we've been able to expand that. So a really intelligent person once told me that success isn't good enough, but we need to reach for significance, and I thought that that was really good. You know, you can have success at a fundraiser, you can have, you know, make money and, you know, be successful, but have you made a difference? Have you changed the world? Have you impacted your community? And that's what we strive to do for in Interact, is make a difference, however small that may be, but we really work to focus our projects on the biggest community impact that we can. So I'm going to share with you a few examples of different projects that we've taken part in. This is by no means all of them. We had one day where we had 3 events on the same day, so it's been a little hectic, but it's good. So the first one is at the Root Cellar. I don't know if any of you have ever been there, but it's an after-school daycare program for kids whose parents cannot afford childcare, but they have to work. So all these kids go from Portland, and they walk on their own all the way to the Root Cellar, and then they have snack time and crafts and activities. So my first day I went there as a freshman, and I don't know if you've ever been to Scarborough High School, but everyone's wearing jeans, leather boots, and earrings, and I showed up, and these kids like looked at me, and they were like, well, we want to play soccer. And I was like, well, I'm really bad at soccer, but okay, sure. And I wanted to be as involved as possible. So I jumped in, started playing soccer, and by the end of the night, we had grown so close, and it was just amazing being able to view the world from their eyes. Like, these kids, they're, 7, 8, 9 years old, and they had so much bravery. I was helping one of the girls who had just emigrated from Russia to the U.S., and she was trying to learn English at the same time as being tutored by me at her math homework, with her math homework. And she had all these friends at the Root Cellar, and she was trying to adapt to a completely new culture. And I just thought, like, I would have been so scared in that situation. And she was all on her own, but she was so brave. And I asked her, how she was doing, like, are you, and she just said, well, I'm having a really good day. Today I get to hang out with my friends. And I was like, that is the most amazing thing I've ever heard. So another event that we have been involved in is the Pixel Fund, which was actually on the screen too. And we have really expanded our kindness approach to reach the environment, the community, and animals as well this year, which has been a huge step for our club, and I'm really proud of that as well. So for the Pixel Fund, it's just amazing because these animals come from kill shelters. Most of them have been abused or abandoned, and they come and they're so scared when they first get there that they have to go through a training period just to make them adapt to life and being with humans. And it's so amazing when you get to see people and they come and adopt a dog, and you can see they're so happy and the dog's so happy, and you know that they're going to make each other's lives so much better, and you helped with that. So that's a project that so many of our volunteers have been involved in, and we're really excited to be working with them. For fundraisers in our community, our biggest fundraiser is during Summerfest. We do a balloon pop, which is really fun. It kind of has a dual purpose. We get involved with the community and have a fun activity for kids. Plus, people get to learn about our club, and we get to get different feedback from the community. But also, the money we raise, we always send to the organization that our club votes most in need. And so this past year it was AmeriCares, and the year before it was CARE, which are 2 huge organizations, but we just really liked their messages, and that's what our club voted on to donate. And it was really nice knowing that we got to have fun, we got to do a community event, and then it was also doubling to help people on the other side of the world. And the last event I'm going to talk about is Partners for World Health, which is the event that we got the middle schoolers involved in. And so they collect donated hospital supplies from around the community. I think they go all the way up to Bangor. And they package them up and ship them overseas to war-torn or impoverished countries. And we go, and it's really nice to have that teamwork and get to work together to package the supplies. You know, we get on like a little projection line, and it's really fun. And then afterwards, we know that we literally saved someone's lives. Like with the stuff that with the materials that we packaged up and sent overseas, someone, you know, a victim was healed by that or could be healed by that, which is really amazing for me. So Interact is really about getting out into the community and working with others, whether it's other Interact members and high school students, or whether it's younger members of our community or adults from Rotary or the rest of the community, and really dedicating time in our days to get away from the stress of high school and life and really focus on you know, volunteering and helping someone, and, you know, realizing that our problems aren't really what matters at that moment. So I thank you so much for your attentiveness. I really appreciate getting this honor to speak today. Thank you so much.
So one word for Sarah would be double wow. I am just, she also told me when I first met her when she walked in, she's going to Worcester Polytech and wants to be a doctor. So I think we're in good hands for some of us that'll be sort of at the other end of the aging spectrum and need a really good doctor in about 20 years. Just really impressive, Sarah. Like, I'm exhausted listening to you, and I'm sure she's getting straight A's on top of it and still has a smile on her face. So good job, parents. And a fun note, before people got here, Robbie Moult, we were talking, and he actually was president of the Interact Club at Scarborough High School back in the day.
More than 10 years ago.
More than 10 years ago, but not more than 50. So I thought that was kind of a fun fact that he's keeping us all safe, and Sarah's here representing the best of youth. So thank you. Our next panelist, Lynn Gary, is ill tonight, but did send a clip of the Robbie Foundation that we'll take a look at, and then I have a few words that Lynn wanted me to share with the group at the end of that.
Loving can hurt. Loving can hurt sometimes, but it's the only thing that I know. When it gets hard, you know it can get hard sometimes. It is the only thing that makes us feel alive. We keep this love in a photograph. We make these memories for ourselves, where our eyes are never closing, our hearts are never broken.
Zamaya is one of the happiest little girls I know. She loves music. She loves playing with her toys. She loves people. I call her my little diva.
Sammy's a fun 9-year-old. Personality-wise, she is very peppy, easy to get along with, fun to be around. She can make even your hardest days, she can find a way to make you smile and make you laugh. She's a lot of fun to be around, and she's got a great personality.
This is my fight song. Take back my life song. Prove I'm alright song.
He is a very fun, loving kid. Loves adrenaline, loves the swing, the bike, loves swimming, loves being outdoors.
Reading.
Yeah, he loves reading. He loves his dad. He's a daddy's boy for sure.
He's definitely the most hardworking person I know. He's funny. He makes jokes that make me actually laugh. He has us laughing every day. He's just quirky and silly, and he's really tender. He says I love you all the time, and yeah, I mean, he's just a really fabulous kid.
They had found a malformation of her brain, and then we went and did an amnio, and that's when we found out that she had a rare genetic disorder. So I found out pretty early on. It doesn't prepare you for what's to come, but it does. I got to do some research and kind of prepare myself for what was going to happen next.
He had suffered a brain injury at birth, hypoxic ischemic encephalopathy, which led to the diagnosis of spastic quadriplegia cerebral palsy.
Sammy's diagnosis came at birth, and when she was born, we sort of hinted that we thought something was up. My husband actually recognized that something might be up, and he asked me if he thought that she had Down syndrome. And we went back and forth for 12 hours with different pediatricians coming in to see her, and then around 2 o'clock the genetic specialist came in and took one look and told us she had Down syndrome, so it became a processing.
Well, I won't give up on us, even if the skies get rough. I'm giving you all my love, I'm still looking up.
It was just, it was a tough time for sure. You know, it was basically throwing us out there with no knowledge, and really didn't expect to experience anything that we've experienced, and so it's been a learning experience. Fortunately, we've had a lot of help from the community and more specifically the Robbie Foundation.
She doesn't want to be held all the time, and she doesn't want, help from mom or whoever. Like, she wants that independence. So, and she wants to ride bikes and stuff. And so I think the biggest challenge is proving that your daughter, deserves to have that stuff. And then that kind of equipment costs more expensive for a child with disabilities. So it's finding those foundations and raising money to be able to afford it.
He's doing great, but he could maybe even do better. And it's a constant balance between being really grateful for where he's at and also not wanting to give up hope that he can be more independent and have more fun and not struggle as hard,
It's a very abnormal world to have a child with a disability, and it gets expensive to be able to make it somewhat normal for these kids, and these kids and these families deserve some sort of normalcy, and for the Robbie Foundation to be able to provide some help and some relief in that sense, whether it be a scholarship for money to cover some therapies or to cover some sort of respite care, or to cover a percentage of a piece of equipment or a piece of equipment. I don't know that even the ceremonies can do justice what that means to a family, and putting words to it can be really hard for a family, but it's a very abnormal world, and it brings a piece of normalcy to us.
Still looking up, but I won't give up. God knows I'm tough. He knows we got a lot to learn. God knows we're worth it.
And the Robbie Foundation has helped with a lot of his needs that aren't covered by insurance, like the hippotherapy and the alternative therapies that help him a lot in his development, where he is very developmentally delayed.
And the Robbie Foundation is amazing. If it wasn't for foundations like them, I wouldn't be able to provide Zamaya with the things she needs to be able to hit those milestones in life, like, the things you don't really think about your kids hitting. It takes us extra steps to get there. So the Robbie Foundation coming in and buying things, you know, those certain things for us makes it easier and not such a financial burden.
It all costs money, and so the Robbie Foundation's been amazing in helping out with that because, for example, swim class, like he couldn't really participate very well in a typical class with same age peers. Like his needs are just so different. He's learning how to swim because of this class, and we could maybe afford some of it, but we can't afford to send him like continuously the way he needs. I mean, he needs to keep it up, and if he stops for 2 months, you know, he's starting all over again. And so, yeah, that's been a huge impact that Robbie Foundation has made for us.
When the dreams you're dreaming come to you, when the work you put in is realized, let yourself feel the pride, but always stay humble and kind. We wouldn't trade ever having Sammy. She brings a smile to our face every day. I could be having the worst day in the world, and somehow, some way, she knows. She has this sixth sense about her, and she'll say something to you that will just crack you up, and everything else doesn't mean anything anymore.
He's got love to give, and I think, and he inspires so much love in other people, and I think, yeah, I mean, we hope hard that he's gonna do great and have a really happy life.
I think he's taught us a lot personally to never take anything for granted, to really, you know, rejoice in the little things in life.
And if we can get that smile from him, that's the biggest reward.
Yeah, he's got a great smile. He tells stories and communicates through his eyes and through his smile.
There are days where it just gets completely overwhelming. You just got to take each day as it comes, regardless of what it gives to you, and that was our mode for a long time, just to survive the diagnosis.
Our goal is always progression and helping him get to do all the things that he would like to do, and as we said before, communication is a big goal of ours, and you know, and just helping him enjoy his life as much as he possibly can.
I just want her to be happy and be, you know, a kid. Like, I just want her to have the joys of life that everybody else has. I mean, it's going to be harder work for her, and we're going to, you know, but that's what I want for her. I just want her to enjoy life just like every other parent has for their kid. I want them to grow, and wherever that level is I'll be happy with. Like, she just deserves everything that every kid deserves, and that's what I hope and plan to give her.
There's this whole world out there that you don't know about unless you live it. And it's a very rewarding world, and there are some very special people in it.
Don't take for granted the love this life gives you. When you get where you're going, don't forget, turn back around. Help the next one in line. Always stay humble and kind.
So I wish Len had been here. I'd like to thank Len from certainly our group for the great work that the Robbie Foundation's doing. I just want to read a quick blurb that she shared with us. She says, "The reason I wanted to be a part of tonight is to create awareness of just how important compassion and support is for these children and their families. And people like you make a difference in the success of our work helping children." So she also said if people could go on, if you're on Facebook, to go on and like the Robbie Foundation and find out more about it, which I did earlier in this process because I had heard of it, but I didn't really understand the extent of the impact they had. Or she said to email her, Lynn at robbiefoundation@gmail.com. So I would encourage people to do that. Next, I would like to bring up a man who needs no introduction, Chief Moulton.
Thank you very much. And thank you for being here tonight. This certainly shows a lot about our community, I think, to have this kind of turnout for our first-time event like this. So it's very encouraging. First, I would like to say that I have been so impressed with some of the young folks that I have seen coming out of this school system. Sarah, make me proud. Interact president, very nice. I suffer from the same thing that Michelle talked about earlier, where I walk into the room and forget why I was there. So I'm terrible with names, so please excuse me. But I participated in the superintendent search just recently, and there was a young lady there from the student council, and again, I was just so impressed with how mature, how kind, and what a great job she did. Would you agree that she was just a pleasure to be around? And one other thing, as we talked about earlier, Operation Hope, we had 3 young ladies come over probably 2 or 3 months ago, and they had gone and gotten fabrics, samples of fabrics, and they had made little bags out of them with some something to tie them, put some grommets and something to tie them, and they had gone out and gotten little tubes of toothpaste and shampoo and things like that, because a lot of these folks that are being sent away to treatment and so forth show up at our door with literally nothing, and so they brought those over. They put those together and brought those over, and again, just shows you what kind of folks were turning out, probably from your reading there, bud. Oh, okay. Okay. One of the things that Bud mentioned, and it's interesting, I didn't really see it on the slide with the words and so forth, but he mentioned respect, and that's one of the things that I think about when I think about kindness and compassion and so forth. And I was really fortunate as a young officer. I had the opportunity to work with a guy who had been there a while, a guy named Dave Twombly, who was probably, in my estimation, the best street cop I've ever known. And he showed me early on that even though cops are supposed to be big and tough, there's another side of that, and when you let that show, I think that has an impact on people. And he always impressed me. First of all, he was a big guy, bigger than me, believe it or not. And usually with big guys in law enforcement, the people that we deal with that are of a mindset that they want to be trouble, for whatever reason, they usually pick the big guy. They want to fight the big guy. I don't know if it's climb the mountain or whatever it is, but that's what they tend to want to do. But Dave was somebody who could walk into a crowd that was out of control and bring it back into control and walk out without having a problem. And it wasn't because he was as big as he was, because I've seen that before, like I said, and that doesn't mean that people aren't going to want to take you on. But the reality of it was that he treated people with respect. He could go into a situation, and it just showed. He exuded respect, and people came to that. They appreciated that, and now that's not going to happen in every single situation. I can tell you, certainly some of the people we deal with, whether we show them respect or not, it's not going to make much of a difference. But I think for the general public, it really does, and so that's something that I saw early on that just really made an impression on me, and I've tried to keep that in mind as we've gone along. And I've been very fortunate to work with a great group of people who tend to recognize that same thing. And some of the programs that we've had, I'm lucky that I get kind of credited with them, but the reality of them is it's not me. I've got some great people that come up with some great ideas. Operation Hope was an idea that came to me from one of our patrol officers and our crime analyst, John Gill and Jamie Higgins, and We're looking at crime trends and realizing how much shoplifting was going on, and also realizing that when they were dealing with these shoplifters, that many of them were folks that were stuck in this horrific cycle of addiction, and they were very honest about it, and they would tell our officers why they were stealing, but we had no answer for them. We had nothing to say to them. And so when they started exploring Operation Hope and looking at the Gloucester model and so forth, it just made sense to me that, yeah, why wouldn't we invest in these people? Why wouldn't we try to understand what it is that they're going through? And if we can break them out of this cycle, then we're not dealing with them at some of these stores for shoplifting and so forth, and they're not making the circle through the jail system and all of that. So, but more importantly, I guess, is it's about saving lives. I mean, I think our folks are very fortunate. They feel very good about the fact that they get that opportunity to save a life now and then, whether it's somebody that's had a heart attack and they start CPR or whatever that might be. But to have 150 people walk through the door and know that some of those people potentially would have died had they not come through our front door is very humbling, and it's something that I'm very proud of our folks for coming up with. Our officer Doug Weed came up with the program for Project Lifesaver. Again, really good program where we can help folks with special needs that tend to wander, and we've sent people to training. We got a grant, so it didn't cost us any money. We sent people to training and got the equipment so that if people register with us, we can give them the arm bracelet and snap it on, and then if they happen to wander off, we have a way to go find them. So that's just another example of our folks seeing a need and trying to come up with a solution, which is what I think we're all trying to do. And there were some pictures at the beginning of the show here that showed a couple of things, which again I'm pretty proud of. We had a young lady who had a bicycle stolen, and I forget how old she was, 7 or 8 years old, and somebody stole her bicycle, and the family couldn't replace it right off and so forth. And the officer that took the report, Glenn Tucker, took it upon himself to go to the other officers and see if they could collect a little money. And they did, and they collected enough. They went shopping. They got a brand new bicycle and a helmet and a water bottle and a couple of other accessories, and went to the young girl's home, presented her with this new bike and so forth. You can't buy that kind of feeling. I mean, that's just something that means a lot to people. And we can arrest people all day long, and that's great, but but when we're able to make a difference in that way, that truly is a good feeling. And so I appreciate those kind of things. We had another situation where we had another picture that was up there, a young boy, I think he was 5, and he was getting treatment down to the cancer center down here. And he's a big law enforcement guy, and he brings his little plastic handcuffs to handcuff the nurses when he goes in for his treatment, so forth. So on his 5th birthday, we became aware that it was his birthday and how much he enjoyed law enforcement. So a lot of our folks went down, Sergeant O'Neill and 2 or 3 other folks at Mike Beeler, went down, and they couldn't go in because of the sterile conditions that this young man was in, but they parked their cruiser out beside the back of the building there where the windows were, and if you could see the expression on this kid's face, and they gave him a little salute and so forth, and it's again, you can't buy that kind of thing. Bud, you mentioned traffic and how we're not kind on the road, and I agree with you 100%. As a matter of fact, I wrote an article for the Leader a few months back, and one of the things I talked about was respect as an enforcement tool, because we have certainly traffic issues all over town, and we try to address those. And the fact of the matter is that we can go out And we can address those through aggressive enforcement, and that helps to a certain degree. We write some tickets, maybe we get the message across to some people. But the real problem is more about respect. We've lost respect for each other. It's cutting each other off. It's not waiting at a stop sign for somebody else to go. It's not being impatient behind somebody and tailgating and pulling out and giving them the finger and beeping the horn and all those kind of things that people do. And it's, to me, it all comes back to respect. And a lot of the calls that we deal with, out in the community are the same thing. We have neighbors fighting with neighbors, and by the time we get called in, it's gone from here to here. And when we get there and we start asking questions, the reality of it is oftentimes people don't remember how this started or what it was all about. It was just they've done something, I did something to them, they did something back, and we've got these two neighbors that can't even talk, and they're having these horrific situations where they're calling us in to mediate, and it's crazy. It's if we could somehow wind that back and say that first thing that happened, maybe if we went over and offered a cup of coffee and said, can we talk about you starting your lawnmower at 7 o'clock in the morning after I've worked the late shift, maybe we wouldn't have some of these issues. So.
One day, many years ago, on a Wednesday morning, I walked down the business from early morning breakfast to the bedroom. I was walking down on Route 1, going to the bedroom, going from Farmers Drive. I got around the corner, and a police officer came by in his room in his automobile, and he saw me. He called the bedroom phone and said there's a man walking out. He's got a gray spectacles on, he's wearing a baseball cap, and he's wearing a gray watch with a black strap. And the message was, the bedroom phone said, one of your residents said, but he comes here every Wednesday morning, helps to affect us. And she said, I should call his wife, let her know that he can stop on the police and let him go talk to them. No, he probably doesn't want to hit me. You probably say keep him.
So, that's about all I have to say, I think. Well, I probably have a lot more to say, but that's for now. I think that's all I have to say. I really do appreciate folks coming out, and I appreciate this whole project, because I think it's really needed. It certainly would help us out, and I think sometimes just that act of kindness or that reaching out or that show of respect means so much more than anything else that we can do. I'll share one other quick thing with you. It's kind of unusual, and I guess some of the things that we do are kind of unusual, but we had a recent situation where we had a motorcycle group club. You'd recognize the name or the whatever, but one of the members' daughter had a situation where she had been assaulted by a boyfriend, and so we got called, and we knew that the club was headed over to resolve things at the house, and so we were responding as well, and we got there, and our officers reached out and said to some of these folks from the motorcycle club, "We understand what's happened, and we understand how you probably feel about it, but can we, what is your intention?" And they said, "Well, we're here to get daughter's belongings out and take her out of here." And so the officers said, "Well, how about if I have a couple more guys come up and we give you a hand, and we'll help you get stuff out of there." And everything went very peacefully. And at the end of the day, I called the president. This is where it gets unusual. I called the president of this motorcycle club, and I told him who I was, and I said, I really appreciate because that could have been a real bad situation. So I really appreciate how you folks handled that and the respect that you showed my people. And he said, well, you know what? Your people showed us some respect, and respect gets respect. Thank you.
Thanks, Chief. That's great stories, and I think we all know how hard not only your job is, your team's job, and we certainly appreciate all the work you do keeping us safe. So thank you. Our next panelist, I got to know probably 4 or 5 months ago, and Heather Dallas, who's the founder of the nonprofit Making It Home. My daughter was moving to Tampa, Florida, and we were moving her out of her Portland apartment, and as college kids do. The good news is she's not living in the basement. But she had all this stuff from her kitchen, and she said, Mom, I don't think it's valuable enough to rent a U-Haul and drive to Tampa because a U-Haul probably costs more than the value of, my Target bought kitchen stuff. So, in it goes to the space at home, so we have all the stuff in boxes. And I was saying to Cheryl LaRue and some people, I really have all this stuff and it's nice, but I don't need it, and I don't want to just take it to Goodwill. I want to give it to a family or something. And she said, aha, I know this woman, Heather Dallas, who has started this nonprofit, and she sets up, helps families set up apartments and living spaces, works with a lot of immigrant families. It's their first home. And if you call her, she'll actually show up. When she says she'll show up, with a trailer, and she'll take it all away and literally create a home for a family. So she showed up. Peter and I spent some time getting to know her. We helped her load the trailer, and, literally the stories will just make you smile and cry simultaneously. But she not only took it all, then she, posted a picture of this really happy family in their new home with a lot of the things that we had donated. So when we were doing this work, her name kept coming up, and every person I see in Scarborough now who I think is getting rid of anything, I give them Heather's number, so she may need to increase her workforce. But I want to have Heather come up and speak with us. Thank you, Heather.
Thanks for the build-up, Michelle. Okay, I do recognize a few faces out here. Amy Volk, I recognize you, and Jean Marie. I have been a resident of Scarborough for a little over 20 years, and during the majority of that time, I was a real estate agent, and I had a home staging business. And I decided about a year ago that I was going to transition to the next phase of my life, and during my time as a real estate agent, and Jean Marie can attest to this, dealing with buyers and sellers in this somewhat affluent communities that we do, so many times I would see things being literally pitched into the dumpster, and I'd be like, give it back. I can find somebody for that. I actually ended up getting a lot of inventory to start my staging business from people who just said, you want it? I don't want to move it, take it. So when I got out of real estate, I thought, well, I still have a lot of inventory here. I don't need all my staging stuff. There must be some place I can give this to. And just like Michelle said, the exact words, but I don't want to give it to Goodwill. Nothing wrong with Goodwill, but there's plenty of people out there. We shop at Goodwill. This is for people who don't have the money to go anyplace. So I did some research, called different social service agencies. Is there an organization that exists that helps people with household items when they have nothing? People kept saying, no, I don't think so. I don't think so. So as I was in my search, Cheryl LaRue, as we know. She's a great networker. She said, you need to meet this friend of mine whose name is Peggy McGuinn from South Portland. She works in social services, and she's been helping these people. And I think it's kind of what you're talking about doing. So I met Peggy for coffee, and it turned out that she is involved in the PTA in South Portland. And I don't know if any of you remember this, but about a year and a half ago, there was an article in the paper about all the homeless children in South Portland. You're nodding your heads. I can remember when I read it, my first thought was, are you kidding me? I've been selling real estate in this area for 15 years. I had no idea we had children in our school systems that were homeless, being bused to school from the motel, from the shelter. So Peggy was at a potluck dinner, and she saw this family, and they were speaking French, and Peggy's fluent in French and very friendly, so she approached them. Turned out they were homeless. They were living at the Maine motel. So she started helping them. When I met her, it was like, lights went off. It was like, really? You have the same concern, the same passion I do to do something about this. So we joined forces, and at 11 o'clock one night, Peggy texted me and said, I just did a Facebook page. What? And that's how Making It Home was born. That was just about a year ago. So, as you can possibly read, our mission statement is short and sweet, offering comfort and hope to the formerly homeless by providing gently used, donated, and discarded household furnishings. It sounds so simple, and as you'll see by some of these pictures, it's just amazing that such simple things can have such an impact. So let me move on here. All right, he told me what to do. Let's see, Will. What do I do? Okay, this is our first family. This is the family that the mother's name is Ame, and it's Ame that Peggy first encountered at the PTA potluck supper. And the woman spoke only French because Peggy's fluent. She started chatting with her. They helped. She and a couple other families in South Portland were so overwhelmed when they heard about this. They said, we have to start helping these people. So they just started getting tables and chairs, all sorts of stuff, and started furnishing the apartment. This is the first family that I visited, and they were almost furnished. They had a few things left, so I had to provide the pillows that, of course, coordinated with the color of the couch that they already had. And after I met them, you look at the faces, and I was totally hooked. First family. They happen to be from Congo. We do help, just before I get too off on my asylum seekers, because they have become my passion. Our mission is we help anyone who has been homeless, who needs the help. We've helped some homeless vets get set up, several women that have been victims of domestic abuse, substance abuse, recovering addicts. But what's happened is the asylum seekers have stolen my heart. And Amy's smiling because they stole Amy's too. And I don't know how many of you know this, but she actually housed an asylum seeker. One of the first ones, probably about 10 years ago, brought her in. I happened to meet the woman at the hospital once because she was being a translator for one of my friends. So we started this, and it's just been going crazy ever since. For those of you who may or may not know anything about how it works with the asylum seekers, they come here because they come from horrific situations in their countries. Every family, every person that I've met has a different story that is in one way or another, maybe even more troubling than the last one. And basically, all that they're really seeking is safety, believe it or not. So Most of them end up starting at the shelter. If it's a family, they start at the family shelter. And when we usually encounter them, they have just gotten their apartment. This is a mother from Angola, Marta, and baby Sharon. Sharon Stone is very popular in Angola, so there are many baby Sharons, I was told. The first day, and this was my first family that I saw with nothing. I was given her name by somebody else who we'd helped. Showed up at the apartment, and she was there with her little boy, and they had been living there for, I forget, I think it was a week. The furnishings in the entire apartment consisted of a little thicker than a yoga mat, this wide. That's what they were sleeping on, the three of them. No chair, no table. They did have a few things to cook with. So we swooped in. She didn't speak English. I had a fellow asylum seeker friend who translated, and we proceeded to, bring them beds, tables, sheets, towels, blah 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 blah. So that was my first family. I have to move my notes. The best thing about this one, to me, the day we left, the first day we brought them things, they went from having absolutely nothing there to my husband helping set up a TV with a DVD and a VHS. Everybody thinks VHS is dead. Don't tell these people that, because that's how they entertain themselves. We set the TV up, VHS player. We left that apartment with her little boy and another little boy who was still at the shelter, sitting on the floor on cushions this far away, watching Finding Nemo, like this. And it was just amazing, amazing. And, everything was thrown out by somebody else. These are two of my early favorites. That's Ruby and Gracie. And you'll see from some of the things in the background, as I started getting more and more people, I started sourcing things and realizing different things that were important. The TVs have been huge because it helps, not only does it helps them learn English, but also they don't have money for cable. They don't have, they don't have money for anything. They barely have money for any food. So I'm a faithful follower of the free stuff section on Craigslist. I've gotten tons of stuff from there. Reached out to the real estate community, because whenever people are selling, especially, they start clearing things out of their house. And the things that these people, that I can use, that I can put into use for these people, are things that most people think have zero value. I don't know if you can notice, but the TV is sitting on one of those stacking plastic things with the drawers. I say to people, oh, really, can I have that? And they look at me and they go, I can make an end table out of that. I can make a bureau out of that. I mean, I can use that for a lot of things. So we improvise a lot because we use whatever we can. One of the things that's been really amazing for me is to meet these people that are from a cultures that I have absolutely never come close to experiencing. I know you've lived many places. Most of the asylum seekers are from Burundi, Rwanda, and Congo. This Joshua is from Congo. And I have dogs, like probably most people in this room, but the Africans are not, they don't know dogs. Dogs are scary. So for me, to have Joshua fall in love with my dog Mo was really a big deal. And in his absolutely endearing Congolese accent, he would say, "Where is my dog? I miss my dog. Where is my dog?" It became his dog. So, and you can see my dog, he likes it a lot too. This is mother and daughter, Beatrice and Lydia, and it's pretty amazing when you see what a set of someone's old dishes and few coat hangers and a waste baskets can do. I like to say to people, do you have plastic hangers? And they go, what? I said, think about it. What would you do if you had no hangers? What would you do with your clothes? Or if you have no waste baskets? So the most basic things that we think have no value turn people in. I mean, I had just met those women, you know. Who knows? As my friend said, if I had been nearly this successful in real estate, I wouldn't be here right now. I'd be off on my yacht somewhere in the Caribbean. Anyway, and incidentally, speaking of being successful, just to set the record straight, we are not nonprofit yet. We haven't applied for it, so I'll make a pitch if there's anyone in the audience who is an accountant who would like to possibly help us file for nonprofit status. Frankly, I've been too busy. It's like making it home crisis, 911, family sleeping on the floor, gotta go. So we just haven't done it yet. This is Gracie. I don't know how you could possibly do anything but pick that child up and hug her. Okay, now the good part. Well, the better part for me. The next thing that happened that was just incredible to me, as I started helping these families, the young men, they're not allowed to work until they get a work permit. So that can be months and months and months. It's against the law for them to work. Well, amazingly enough, they thought that this crazy 65-year-old woman was kind of fun to hang around with, and I had a trailer, so they said, we'll help you, you know. I never asked one of them to help. I didn't say, I'm giving you a bed. Okay, now you go spend some time with me. This young man's from Burundi. He came here with his sister and his cousin, all by themselves. Their mother's still in Burundi. He's just amazing. He helps me at least once, twice a week. We go deliver to fellow asylum seekers because, as he said, that's what we should do. So that's what we do. This is Ori. Ori Souvenir. Is that a great name or what? Now, here's a compassion story. Ori was 17 when he came here from Burundi all by himself. He lived at the teen shelter in Portland at first, and he befriended, or should I say, the person befriended him, an attorney that would help the troubled youth at the teen center. And as Ori said, I wasn't troubled, but I figured if this guy's here every week, maybe he could help me with my asylum. So the guy met him, and he was so impressed with him that he put an ad on Craigslist saying, seeking family to host young asylum seeker. And a Jewish family from Portland took him in. Now, I can bet you that he'd never met a Jewish family, certainly hadn't lived with them, and he's just amazing. They housed him for, I think, a year. He finished high school. He has an apartment. I helped him furnish his apartment. And at Hanukkah, he was extremely upset because he hadn't... He said to me, oh, my God, Hanukkah's almost over, and I haven't called them to wish them Happy Hanukkah. All right, so the woman in the first, Krista, she talked about she said something at the very end, something about one humanity or one whatever. I have to say, of everything that I've experienced in this, that's the thing that has resonated to me. It doesn't matter. These people come from a world that none of us could even remotely imagine. They've all been either in jail, had their lives threatened, had their family members killed, the Rwandan genocide, there's people being killed in Burundi as we speak right now, and within 5 minutes, they look at me, I look at them, and it's like, okay, let's get in the trailer, let's go. And that I never would have thought could happen. That's Derek. And when you see that face, I mean, he's just like that. He just makes me laugh and smile and sends me texts about how much he misses me because now he's working. This is Jimmy. I introduced him to Higgins. Some of you will recognize that in the background. And most of these people, to make you all feel really inadequate, with the exception of possibly Michelle because of her world traveling, most of these people speak at least 5 languages. So, which is really important for me because I speak English sometimes on a good day and a little French. So he's one of the major ambassadors who goes with me and explains the situation, and he's awesome. I've actually been sighted around town several times. I get little messages. Saw you broken down on the side of 295 with a flat tire. Sorry I couldn't help. Saw you roaming through downtown. But this is what we do. Donations. So donations started coming in. Like Michelle said, she heard more people. So then we decided that we needed to get a storage facility. So right now I rent a couple Rigby storage containers. I'm sure most of you know what those are. See them on construction sites. I am the queen of the Rigby lot. I go there 7 days a week, picking up, dropping off. The outpouring of donations has been pretty amazing. Within the Scarborough community, I have multiple people in this room that have donated, but also I have to just do a special shout out to the Rock Church, because I don't know what it is about that church, but lately all donations lead to the Rock Church. I meet these people. I picked up in Biddeford. The guy says to his wife, "So how do you know Heather?" She says, "I don't know her." "Well, where'd you find her?" "Oh, church." "Do you go to the Rock Church?" She says, "How did you know that?" So they've been amazing, amazing. Other members of the community have done some really interesting things. A woman down at the beach, Lynn Shryock, helped alter curtains because everybody's apartment they have great big windows. She cut curtains down so we could give them their privacy and get them their curtains. I have friends who will send me texts say, "I just saw a bed on the side of the road. Should I pick it up?" I say, "Yes." And then they deliver it. This is Angela, and I was at a food pantry. I took one of my new friends to the food pantry one day and met a lady that was volunteering there, and she said, "So who are you and why are you here with him?" So I explained the organization. She said, "Well, you know, I make these fleece blanket things." And I said, "Oh yeah, I know. Well, I used to make them for I don't know what it was, some immigrant group." She said, "I've made them for them so long, I don't know, I think they're sick of them. I'm looking for somebody else to give them to." So I said, okay. Since then, she's made probably 20 of those for me. And the look on the faces when they get them, they're fun, they're cozy, they're great. This is baby Jed. And baby Jed and his mom were in the shelter for 4 months from Rwanda, and they're now in a new apartment, and they're very happy. And another great connection that happened, another Scarborough resident, Kimberly Peck. I don't know if anybody knows her. You're nodding. She sort of buddied up with Jeanette because they don't get any food assistance. They get no money for food until they get their asylum number, which can be a long time. So Kim goes and picks Jeanette up twice a month and gives her a ride to the food pantry, which has just turned out to be an amazing thing for both of them. And that's just one of our other little families, and you can see the faces on them are just incredible. My friend Mary Jane, who's sitting in the front row here, has been intimately involved with some of these families with me, and she met this little girl, and within an hour, Mary Jane said to me, "I'm in love with that child, and I want her." This kid is going to be just like Sarah someday. She's going to be up there, powerful, confident. This girl is going places. She's a riot. So the second day we went back, Mary had gone through and stolen her granddaughter's things to bring purged them is a nicer way to put it, to bring them to Angela. And she donned the princess outfit and started posing, and all I could think was, a princess in any language any country is still a princess. And no more monkeys jumping on the bed is also true. So for the past year, I have been on a journey that I never planned and has been truly life-changing. I can't really even describe what it's done for me. But the best part of the entire experience has been to see faces like that, given the littlest things, and to get the smiles and the hugs. I got to tell you, I get so many hugs. It's unbelievable. And we have helped over 200 people making it home in just a year. So that is my story, and if anybody would like to help make it happen at Making It Home, as my friend coined the other day, I think that's pretty good, you can see me afterwards. Thanks very much. Yeah, did I go over? Thank you, Heather. Just one thing I'll share. When Heather came to pick up all the goods at our house, Peter was in the garage and, carrying out mirrors and dishes, and she's in there, like, poking around, and she said, so what about this, and what about this, and are you guys going to keep that? And I said, well, that table's kind of crap. I said, it has, like, water stains on it, and I think it's fourth generation. She goes, these people are sleeping on yoga mats. They don't care. She goes, put it in the van. So if she comes to your house, make sure anything you don't want her to take is, like, tacked down with super glue or something. So she is passionate, to say the least. So thank you, Heather. Our last guest, last but not least, snuck in. He had a family commitment, but we're glad that he's here. And I think his name is Karem. Is that pronounced? Okay. So thank you for being here. And he is a Scarborough citizen, a businessman, a published author, and a poet. So I'm just very curious to have us meet him. Thank you.
You gotta let me talk first. Well, I just want to say, I apologize for being late, but I do want to say that what the chief does and what Heather does is very noble. Very noble. I'll just keep it short. So my story, as a point of reference, and then I like to open it for a little for Q&A, is, so I'm Turkish. I grew up in Pakistan. And I came to this country with $200 in my pocket and one pair of change of clothes and a sneaker that was put together by duct tape. And I went to the world's largest Benedictine college, which is in St. John's in Minnesota. And I was the first Muslim ever to be there in 375 years. And somehow I made my way over here. My wife's from South Portland. I'm fortunate enough to know some of her friends. I've been here for like 16-some years. And I'm blessed. I've succeeded enough and I've screwed up enough. But I'm extremely active and passionate within the entrepreneurial and business ecosystem, and especially within the immigrant population. So I just want to have a very quick conversation on three things. One is within the context of kindness, right? So the first thing is, these days the conversation is rhetoric-driven, is passionate on a good day, ignorant on a bad day, and I think that one way to be kind about it is not to be reductionist. So one good example is, there's a lot of labels thrown out, and I've had my fair share of having long chit chats with Homeland Security, because if you're born in Pakistan and you're Turkish, you travel a lot and you've got multiple passports from the past, you get pulled out a fair amount. And then if in the past you have protested at the Pentagon, you get pulled out even more. If you've written a lot, that aids in getting pulled out even more. And then when you're fairly outspoken, when you're in the security line and you see certain injustices and you speak out against it, you get pulled out even more. So one way is not, when I say reductionist, you know, there's a lot of labels that get thrown out. You know, whether or not you have a accent or not, or whether or not you shouldn't be in this country or not. The evil in that is it reduces the other, right? It reduces it to a word that maybe is simplistic, easy to understand, but at the same time is extremely rejectionist, which is you are the other. You know, and recently with the family we were at Ellis Island, and if you look at the history of this country, which we tend to throw around with wild abandon, if you look, we've gone through the anti-Japanese sentiment, the anti-Chinese sentiment, the anti-Irish sentiment, the anti-Catholic sentiment. You know, one could say that it was inevitable there would be an anti-Islam or an anti-Muslim sentiment in this country. But history is also a guide. The way that we as a country overcame those ignorances is by being present and by having context. And what I mean by that is to have a conversation with the other person. When you have a conversation with the other person, you get context. Who are they? Where do they come from? You know, are there some common denominators with the life that they led and the life that you lead, right? And when you have a conversation, then there is a story to be told, and then the stories, more often than not, end up being, you know, fairly similar in some way, shape, or form, whether it's love for one's kids or for music or for, you know, country, God, and land, whatever those common denominators are, you know, it comes up by conversation. So when there's a lot of rhetoric being thrown around, and I get my fair share of that on some bad days, the only way I can overcome that within the context of kindness is to say, let's just talk. Let's just put down, you know, sort of this armament, the nuclear warfare of words. Let's just sit down and have a conversation. Maybe there isn't a common denominator to be had, but I'm willing to give you my time, which is probably the most important thing that we have, or the most valuable thing that we have. And it's amazing what that reveals, actually. It actually makes both parties be vulnerable. And it's an invitation to be vulnerable. Now, some don't like that, because as a culture, we don't like being vulnerable, especially males. We hate that. But I do believe there's a lesson there, especially as the Benedictines taught me, which is you have to reduce things to the elemental qualities of what makes being a human being be a human being. You know, love, stewardship, some quiet thoughts of meditation, care for the other, being part of the community, doing things beyond yourself. Those are things that matter. And so today, for example, in the paper, you know, there's this fear about having, you know, Muslim cemeteries in communities. What? Breeding ground for terrorist activity? That's a stretch. They're dead. But you know, this is fear. This is fear that boils over and colors everything, right? And when it colors everything, people like myself, you know, have a couple of comments to that. So, other than the fact, you know, you're being incredibly stupid, which is. It is dangerous to think that the fabric of today's society is not contingent on us being decent and respectful to each other. Because otherwise, it's fairly anarchic and chaotic. And having come from a fair bunch of countries that have gone through chaos and anarchy, it's not a happy place. Interestingly enough, whether it's our mode of government, whether it's our education system, there's an incredible amount of blessedness within this country. And I think we need to sort of acknowledge that, and we need to acknowledge that with some level of inclusiveness, and to fight that fear by saying it's okay. Things are big enough, hearts are big enough to accommodate it all, right? So, as much as I may disagree vehemently with the rhetoric, whether it's the local stuff or whether it's the national stuff, the only response I could possibly have, at least on well thought out level, is to say, why do you have this fear? And do you realize that everything around us is big enough to accommodate everybody? So, for example, when we think of statistics, you know, Maine has 1.2 million people within a land square area, equivalent to the size of Bangladesh, which houses 191 million. plenty of area. I mean, should be able to get along just fine. You know, when the demographics of the state, which clearly show that we are in need of a population base that's not necessarily born and raised here, but has a certain drive and a passion to do things pretty much on an unequivocally positive basis, maybe we should admit that to ourselves and say, that's okay. One is not at the expense of the other. We don't live in a community or in an environment which says it's an either-or a zero-sum game. If we do, then shame on all of us. And I tend to be pretty hard, you know, if somebody says, you know what, I want to go and eat in my Iraqi restaurant all day, every day, I'm saying, well, then that's dumb, frankly. Go downstairs and, you know, have a pizza, for God's sake, because you're part of this community. So I can slap them around a little bit, too, and I get slapped around myself. But at the end of the day, we have to be brave enough to say, there are things that we don't know, and it's okay not to know them, but we're willing to learn. You know, the tool of the internet is an amazing thing, and even if we gouge ourselves and devour Fox News or MSNBC or whatever it is, maybe we should read The Guardian or the International Herald Tribune, or go to websites like The Intercept, which show stories from all around the globe. Maybe we should read Dawn from Pakistan or whatever. Click on something that is different, right? And so when questions get asked by our kids or whoever, let's be present to them and say there are other options to get some information and some, what I would call content that has some meatiness to it, some stories to it that resonate. So that's my sword that I can say, you know. And then, you know, if people say, you know, what do you do to be able to do X, Y, and Z? I say, look, you know, I spend a significant amount of time coaching, mentoring businesses, entrepreneurs, colleges. You know, I serve a lot on boards. And one thing I always say is, I'm giving myself to you. I can write the check, sure. But that's not why I'm on this planet. I am here because I'm gifting myself, just as everybody else should. And I think when you start thinking that way, not only as a Benedictine, as a Christian, as a Judaic or Muslim, it's all of those things. But then unless the other individual is a moron, and they're there, they realize, well, you're being fairly egalitarian about you. So what are they going to do? You know, their defenses will drop. Most of them does. So my invitation would be, from a kindness perspective, just do that. And stand up. Really, do stand up. If somebody says something stupid, just stand up and say, no, that's wrong. And let's have a conversation. Because if we don't stand up and say it, it's an assumed fact then, and the assumed fact then becomes reality that we create for ourselves. So if somebody is saying something xenophobic or bigoted or sexist or racist, stand up. Because if you don't stand up, if I don't stand up, then the narrative changes. And right now the narrative is in a fair state of flux. So if you're going to be kind, do it with a voice. Don't assume somebody else is going to do it. You know, I don't think these great people over here assume that somebody else is going to do it. They did it. Well, you should do it. Doesn't matter at the end of the day whether it's accepted or not. You just should stand your ground. Say it. You know? One last word. The ability to have a conversation and be animated with our hands. And I'm having an exceptionally tough time because my wife said, hey, you can't make it. Because Middle Easterners, we're very animated. The great thing about having a conversation is you tend to make this very concerted effort to realize that at the end of your life, the only thing that will matter is what you left behind. As limited as that may be, as ephemeral as that may be. The conversation is one of the few things that have a certain sense of immortality to it, other than our kids. Seriously. Or if we're lucky, if we write a couple of 3 words that live on for 400 years, like Mr. Will. Shakespeare, not Roe. But, you know, I busted him out. And, you know, it's okay to, it's okay to say, let's just talk for the sake of talking. I think there's value in that. There doesn't need to be an agenda, you know. So I hope you guys do that. I don't want us to be the exception. There are places to be the exception. This is not one of them. I should be the norm. And I'm not suggesting it's easy. But for somebody, you know, I've lived many more years in this country than I actually lived the first 17 and a half years of my life abroad. You know, now I call it abroad. You have to give yourself the credit that you're part of a country that has an incredible amount of glory to it. I mean, think about it. You know, we have water every day, lights, cars. Those are the basic things we take for granted, right? But other than that, what's the glory there? And the glory is the right of self-determination, speech, being like this, having some level of comfort to have this kind of conversation. I think we should spread that around a little bit. Give people, again, context. You know, overcome that fear. So that's all I got.
So I'm Katie Foley, for those of you who don't know me. Thank you all for coming tonight. When we were designing the evening, we really weren't sure how much time we would need and what time to allocate for each portion. We're obviously a little longer than we originally intended, so I do want to be mindful of that. I know it's a work night for many folks who have to take off. So I think we'll skip the Q&A for this evening, but if you have burning questions, because I know I do, I know both from the TED Talk and from various things that were shared this evening, I'd like to follow up with everybody. So either write them on your card, connect with us on Facebook, and really we can look at this evening as it was less of a dialogue, but it's the beginning of the dialogue. That would be my hope for it. So I'm going to bring Kristen up to close as we had originally planned, and thank you again for coming, and here's Kristen.
Thank you. Kristen Allen, for those of you that don't know me. And I just want to say thank you so much to all of you who gave your time, and I hope that everybody was able to glean something that you can take away and use in your day-to-day life. And I also want to thank all of you for coming out and, again, spending your time with us tonight. I'm just so impressed to see the dedication and commitment in this community to wanting to promote kindness and compassion, and I think it's something that we can all use. And then lastly, I want to thank, they're not here obviously, but the folks that contributed to our compassion report that Peter put together. Thank you, Peter, for compiling that for us, and we will make that available to you. For those of you that are not on Facebook, we do have an email address that you can send if you'd like to have any of the information sent to you, Scarborough Kindness Project @gmail.com, and we will be sure to supply any of that information. And I do have one more thing that I wanted to say, and that is somebody here that really needs to be thanked for pulling this together and for bringing this group together, and that is Erin. I didn't know Erin a year ago, and she's put a lot of her heart into this group, and so thank you. So thank you all. If you have any questions that you want to stick around, great. Otherwise, thank you for coming.